Hey guys, Professor Bill, Comic Book University, and X-Men Green, issue number 2, and this is proof that you guys don't really like me as much as I thought you did. You guys actually asked me on the first video. You gotta read the second one. Go to Marvel Unlimited. It's amazing. You guys are evil with a capital E-U. Like, what the frick was this comic book, dude? And I can't say all bad things about it. There were actually some cool parts in here. I think a lot of it, though, was potential for the future because, yes, X-Men Green shall be back. Hopefully not with an issue 1. Hopefully with, issue 3 when it finally returns because, God, I hate that. There's 400 issue number 1s of this particular comic book. And I'm not talking about the print run. I'm talking about the volumes. No, not interested. Stop doing that whack crap. Let's just, actually do comic books. Anyway, it's up to the spurious designs of whoever's in charge of Marvel this week. Marvel's been pretty basic with who's in charge. So let's get talking about who made this comic book, and we'll move on from there. Jerry Dugan is the writer, Emilio Lazio is the artist, and Rachel Rosenberg on colors. VC's Joe Sabino doing the letters, Tom Mueller and Jay Bowen, or with Jay Bowen doing the design. What about covers? Oh, there we go. Emilio Lazio and Rachel Rosenberg doing the cover art. And X-Men were created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. But yeah, no. Aside from Magneto and Charles and Scott, none of these were created by these guys. Even what's his name? Sauron. No, Sauron. Sauron, I think, was created by those guys. I think Sauron was created by those guys. I know it was a while ago. Anyway, might have been Roy Thomas. Anyway, bang. So let's go. This comic book sucked exactly as much as I thought it was going to be, minus a few little perks here and there. The book was like, she's just going on and she's fighting against Black Mamba, who's a nobody. Like, she's an absolute freaking nobody. Who cares? Whatever. I guess it made sense since she wasn't... Look, what can Nature Girl do? She could talk to freaking animals and she could poke you with her freaking antlers, right? And apparently now she can also stab you in the neck with a pair of scissors if you hand feed a freaking sea turtle a plastic bag. Yeah, this... guys, I'm heartbroken by this. There's a part where Black Mamba uses her Dark Force to cause memories to pop up and kind of go against her. Kind of like how, what's her name? Oh, come on, Mirage. My favorite mutant. How Mirage uses her, psych, sometimes she's called, uses her psychic abilities to cause your worst fear to come against you. This was like her worst regrets, right? Or at least it was supposed to be. But somehow it didn't really work. She didn't have any regrets. Curse didn't have any regrets either, which is weird. But having Moon Girl, God, I wish this was a Moon Girl comic books. Having Nature Girl not have any real regrets. She's like, I don't feel, the guy who should get the convenience store guy who owns the store where he was freaking stabbed. Like, dude, it's not his fault that somebody decided to just throw the bag in the freaking garbage. I mean, Jesus Christ. Like, it's... Oh my God, what the hell are we dealing with here? She has no regrets for stabbing him and killing him. She seemed like she did, but she didn't. It's like she was becoming one with the feeling. It's like, no, that's okay. I'm good with this. I'm happy that you died. I don't regret you dying or me killing you. The guy's like, dude, I could have had a family or this or that or whatever. She's like, whatever. It doesn't matter. How? Okay, so, I mean, is this what Jerry Dugan wanted? Like, you actually wanted to establish her as a psychopath at this point. And I mean, this comic book was just completely irreverent because, I mean, you had all these jokes going around back and forth, right? All these freaking jokes that, like, Sauron shows up and him and Black Mamba are talking about their sapiosexuals or something like that. I actually had to look that one up. Like, I could see being attracted to intelligent people, because I think that most people are really, really dumb. Like average at best, which is, yeah, not great. But when you come across something like this, where we're like, they're just like, I'm attracted to, I'm only attracted to smart people. Me too. It's like, dude, I really genuinely expected these two to be banging in the back room or just right in the open like cats, I really expected to see that at some point. I didn't, thank God. But it would have been very apropos for this comic book. Guys, later on, it gets worse because Sauron actually tears off somebody's arm and starts eating the arm. Like, you can't have Wolverine doing this to save your life. You have Wolverine just constantly... Kelly Thompson was just talking recently in one of her newsletters. She's like, actually, no, it was a Twitter poll question. Did Wolverine actually ever kill anybody in the comic books? I sat there and I thought about it. I'm like, I don't know. I can't remember a time that Wolverine, actually killed someone in the comic book. Yeah, sure, you could say Phoenix. You know what I'm saying? But she didn't actually die. Even on the cover of that one comic book where he's stabbing, Phoenix 2, Rachel. Just stabs her, blah, right? Like that, schneckning, see the claw. Nah. Bullseye has killed lots and lots and lots of people. You could start naming off people he's killed. You know what I'm saying? Elektra barely counts because she came back. But it was still at least really impressive because nobody expected something like that, right? Wolverine, did he... Aside from, a Jean Grey, who's he killed? By the time I finally saw Wolverine actually cut somebody's body part off, like an arm or something like that, it was in Secret Wars. And it was, what's it, not Molecule Man, Crusher Creel, the Absorbing Man, right? Cut off his arm, cut into, little slivers. Jim Shooter did that. And then he just held the pieces back together and reformed it into a human and, I'm okay. So there was a brand new power for Crusher Creel. Secret Wars was amazing. When you go back and you look at some of the stuff that they did in there, oh my God, absurdly amazing. This, whew, boy, oh boy. When you see Nature Girl, and there's Wolverine and Curse, Sauron, and they're not doing anything. But it's still gory and bloody and mutilated. This reminds me of when I watched RoboCop. All right, the original RoboCop. And people my age, y'all can attest to this. When I was 12 years old, I was at my buddy's house. I think his name was Daniel. It was a long time ago. I'm hanging out at his house. He actually had a condo, one of those 3-story triplex deals. We're sitting there. He's like, yeah, this movie RoboCop, it's amazing. I was like, okay, let's watch it. I heard about it. It's supposed to be really cool. Yeah, let me check it out. Because we saw the trailers for it and everything like that, but we didn't know how gory this was. Like a trauma film. My age people remember this. This was if this was a trauma film, it would be more successful than Toxic Avenger was. That's how gory this was. There's the scene, close to the beginning of the movie. This guy, he's just doing, with the shotgun, and then, boom, shoots it, blows off Murphy's hand, right? Was his left hand or his right hand? I forget which one it was. But blows, and you just see the hand kind of, just and it practically evaporated. It was just gone. And I remember looking at this oh my God. Oh no, there was something before that even. Ed 209 up in the office building. Drop the weapon. I think you better drop the weapon. Okay, I'm putting it down. You have 10 seconds to comply. I put it down. And then all of a sudden, and that's not the only scene. The toxic waste scene. Dude, that movie for a 12-year-old, that was traumatizing. It was so traumatizing. So messed up. I'm sitting here watching that movie. This relates to the comic book. I'm watching that my sons now who are 7 and 9 respectively, I want to watch The Predator with them. I want to watch some of these other movies with them that, really cool movies from the past, so you can actually see good movies. Good movies, right? The Predator, really good movie. It's not just Arnold. This was the first time that Arnold actually did a movie that was like, wow, there was actually a plot to this. Yeah. Some alien who's coming back to hunt humans and whatnot. But there was a really good plot to this. And it wasn't just him kicking ass and taking... No, he got his ass handed to him in this movie. This dude barely survived. That's why Predator 2 was so stupid. It's like, Danny Glover did a better job than freaking Arnold Schwarzenegger? I'm not buying it. Wow. And I really want to watch it with them. But I'm like, nah, it would be too bloody for them, right? But no, I watched when I was 12. I don't know, maybe when they were 12, I watched. And I'm like, I don't know what's a good age to watch gore and blood and all this crazy stuff, right? Meanwhile, they Five Nights at Freddy's. The world is just upside down right now. I'm realizing now with my boys that we are so desensitized to this crazy crap. And meanwhile, RoboCop had jokes in it. I'd buy that for $1, right? And that's basically what this comic book was. This issue of both of these issues of this comic book, with all the jokes in it, especially this one being so jokey, this is like the RoboCop to 12-year-olds of comics. Wolverine wasn't allowed to kill or maim people. I remember the one scene in one of the early Wolverine comic books, Volume 2, because there was the 4-issue miniseries with Frank Miller, and then there was the regular series. Issue 1 had him on top of a mountain of bodies, with his claws, and he had the black clothes on. It was Patch, right? I remember sitting here. There was the one scene where Wolverine, there was there was all these guys in the bar, and Wolverine, he knew that the guy was coming over the bar, and you saw a close-up of him and the very bottom of the bar wood, but you didn't see the top. And he was listening, and then he puts his hand here, puts it here, and then he just schnick, like that, and you hear a chock sound. And so off camera, we got the impression that Wolverine actually put his claws through somebody and possibly killed them. I'm going to go back a little bit further. You ever seen Psycho, the original Psycho? It was a black and white movie, even though there were color movies out at the time. Not Edgar Allan Poe. For crying out loud. I know his name. My mind is wandering all over the place. I'm trying to make comparisons to this comic book. Alfred, Jesus Christ. I can't believe I can't remember his name. Anyway, Psycho, the guy who originally made that movie. And somebody in the comments, please. But Norman Bates, right? Anthony Perkins was in that movie. And they chose to make that movie black and white. So when you see the shower scene, where there was, some nudity in that. But there was the scream. The ultimate scream in all movies, because of the close-ups that they did, and then the farther aways, and there was the choking of her dying, right? And then you saw the blood go at the end of it all. You knew it was over because you just saw the blood going down the drain. In reality, that was chocolate syrup, but it was black and white, so you couldn't tell. It was chocolate syrup that was going down the drain, but, blood going down the drain. They didn't have to show the knife going in. It wasn't like, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, right? It wasn't like the Friday the 13th movies. You didn't need to see the blood, or excuse me, the knife going into the freaking body or anything like that. That was unnecessary. It was the implication, and it was so obvious in it, but it left you this sense, and it was this dread that it kind of stuck with you afterwards. And you just kind of sat there right? When we watch the Friday the 13th movies and all the movies that come out today that are just jump scares, right? You'd be like, oh my God. And then, and then at some points when the actual murder was happening, instead of just, regular jump scare, ah! And then you see a scene where Jason does some creative way of killing somebody. And it's funny because I know that those are the movies that a lot of us go back to, like, oh, these were great. These were great because they were campy. There was nothing cerebral about these movies. Case in point, Part 7, where he goes against a psychic, right? It was just, they sat there and they thought, what are some cool, name me 5 to 7 cool ways that Jason could kill somebody, new tools or ways that he can kill somebody, and then boom. And if you want proof, look at the video game that just came out like a year or two ago, whatever that was. A couple of years ago, the Friday the 13th game, where you have to find certain fatalities to use for Jason, right? Different ways, special ways to kill people. I say fatalities and I'm reminded of Mortal Kombat. The mainstay of that, why that was so much better than Street Fighter, is because of the fatalities in it. And then the friendships and the babality, all these different special ways to do a finishing move, right? But those are just things where it's like you see something cool, Friday the 13th Part 3, Jason 3D, right? The one scene where he crushes the guy's head and the eyeball pops out right towards the camera in 3 dimension, right? It's like, there are fun little stupid creative ways to watch it, and then you forget about it. And all these are throwaway movies for the most part. There's no real plot to it. There's a backstory that nobody cares about. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's whatever, right? But with Psycho, still can't remember his name. Damn it. I got Alfred Pennyworth in my head. He made this movie so that when you saw that scene, it stuck with you. It resonated. It actually affected your cerebellum and made you scared to take a shower. Jaws. Spielberg's not the genius everybody thinks he is, right? He wanted to have that, Bruce the Shark right in the freaking beginning. Right in the freaking beginning. He wanted to show the hell out of that shark, right? He wanted to scare you with the size, blah, 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 blah. The reason why that movie's great is because the mechanical shark kept malfunctioning, so they couldn't show the shark until the very end. Until the very end. That's when they were able to show the shark, right? And then there was the one scene where you saw, how big the shark was. It was going past the kid the boy in the pool who went into shock, right? But the thing that made that movie great was the thing that pissed off, Spielberg so much. They couldn't show the shark. So it was always like, what the frig? You go back and you watch that movie, and it's timeless. It's timeless. And then you look at the movie in 3D, Jaws 3D, Part 3. And it was like, he's a SeaWorld. She's a SeaWorld. And oh my God, the biggest shark, it's the mama. And it's all these different ways. And it's like, dude, that's Deep Blue Sea, right? And some other silly little things like that, right? There's always silly little stuff. But that original Jaws movie, no matter how much the sequel sucked, that original Jaws movie, it blew our minds. And it made us afraid to go into the water. I'm not saying comic books have to be like that. I'm not saying all comics have to be like that. But if you were to compare this comic book to anything, it's the campy bullshit where they've got like the trauma, but not even as endearing as the trauma films were, because at least they were self-aware of how silly they were. They actually tried to make Nature Girl into this, I don't know about terrifying force, but because they had all this comedy around. It's like you just don't know what you're doing at this point. You want to make her into a villain. Fine. I'm good with that. You want to have this psychotic kid running around with her also. Sure. Make her the evil little sidekick chick. I'm cool with that. But for the love of God, they killed somebody over a plastic bag. No regret. And there's comedy everywhere around. And one of the comedy scenes was Sauron biting off a dude's arm. A guy who's just a regular guy working a 9 to 5 or whatever. You know what I'm saying? and then eating the arm right in front of him and making jokes the whole time. This is this is like when somebody writes Batman the wrong way, and people see that in a vacuum, without knowing the history of Batman. It's like, okay, Batman is a top 1% person, right? White male, who goes around, who has all the money in the world to fix his crime-ridden place, but instead he just, his city. Instead, he decides to spend all that money on making a costume and jets and planes and boats and cars and motorcycles and whatever, and little batarang doohickey thingies, and he starts punching poor, underprivileged people in the face who are just trying to get ahead. That's what, when you don't know how to write somebody, or that scene that I just heard about and I didn't see it. Thank God I didn't see it, because I probably would have had a mental breakdown seeing this scene. Batman seeing a bunch of protesters. They're not protesters. They're looters at this point, going into a store, convenience store, destroying the store. Rioters and looters. And instead of Batman like dropping a smoke grenade and going down there and speechifying them, or just beating the living shit out of these morons, which is something that Batman would do, because you can't just let people start looting. You can't let rioters start looting something. And this was apparently this was supposed to be a play off of the Black Lives Matter thing. It's like, oh well, it's understood that people did such and such. No, it's not. No, it's not. And if you want proof, by all means, please go out, spend your life savings getting a store or some kind of a business, and have some absolute psychopath losers who have nothing and nothing to lose break in, wreck your place, hurt you, hurt your family, and then get off scot-free. Batman said, they've got insurance. Let a judge say something like that to you. This sort of psychopathic nonsense that has permeated media, it's almost taken over social media. I can't go on a TikTok or something. I can't see stuff like that. You got people defending this sort of thing. I used to, based on, I'm older, right? I'm 47 years old. Based on, I'm going back and seeing riots and things. I remember somebody got upset at me one time, and it stuck with me a little bit while, because I said something like, historically, the people who start the riots are usually the people who turned out to be right. Historically, mostly, as I've stated, mostly, that's been true. People are only, there's a saying, people are only 3 meals away from rioting. If the government F's up so badly that we can't feed, that we can't, it's not about feeding people. I don't want somebody to feed me. I'm not a baby. What I want is for handcuffs and shackles to be taken off so that I can go out and feed myself and feed my family, because I'm a man. I'm a provider. I don't want to be fed, right? One of the men die at an earlier age than women. Maybe it's because all of a sudden somebody starts feeding us and we're like, yeah, it's time to check out. This is some bullshit. You know what I'm saying? This is some bullshit. It's not about, oh, you've earned this. I didn't earn being fed. I didn't earn, no, I don't want to be here anymore. Bye. It's time to go. You know what I'm saying? I need somebody to wipe my butt. Jeez, that's not since I was a baby something like that happened. I don't want something like that. Jeez, I'm still looking for the doctor who slapped my ass to make sure I was breathing when I was a kid. It's like, you could have just asked me and I would have told you. You slapped me? And there were no repercussions for that? Still looking for that guy. Anybody my age who ever saw Harlem Heat, you know that was a funny joke. Eddie Murphy just delivered a lot better than me. Nowadays I see this nonsense where people start talking about there are good reasons to just loot stores and this, that, and the other thing, and we're so sick and tired of the things in our neighborhood and da-da-da-da-da. But these are people who don't understand economics. These are people who don't understand there's a reason why you live in a food desert. It's because people are afraid to come to your town. I don't like that I can't get a taxi back to my town. Why do you think people are afraid to come to your town? Why do you think people are afraid to go to Detroit and Baltimore? I got offered a job. This was I think 8 years ago. I got offered a job for I think it was for like 50, I think it was 54,000 a year, whatever it was, 55,000 a year, to start teaching just math in a high school, a public high school. And I was like, and this is back in back in the States, and I was like, oh, that's really good. And there was opportunity for advancement and da-da-da, obviously in the school. I could become a superintendent eventually. You know what I'm saying? Like my old biology teacher. Excuse me. And I was like, that's really good to start. For a teacher? That's really good to start. I did the GREs already. They saw my scores. They were like, awesome. We would love to have you. Do you think you could teach math? We're having a hard time teaching math. And we saw your GREs. And you did really good in math. I'm like, well, yeah, I'm a former electrical engineer. Yeah, like I interviewed with these guys. Boom, 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 boom. Long story short, why did I take the job? Because I didn't understand what Baltimore was. I took a trip. Because I'm not going to move from Jersey to Baltimore, to any place without actually looking at Maryland. It's like, yeah, Maryland. There's nothing going on in Maryland, right? I didn't realize how bad Baltimore was. That was like some Joe Clark bullshit right there. Lean on Me, that movie with Morgan Freeman for that Patterson, New Jersey high school? This was like that. Except all the schools were like, I looked at this, I'm like, this. Dude, I got a family. I got kids. And like as a teacher, you can't do anything. These kids who don't have their brains developed and they're just, at the end of the day, they're not even trying to do well in school. They're just scumbags. They're just scumbags. And they talk like they could kick your ass and blah, 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 blah. So if you ever, because I've seen this. I've seen a teacher snap, and I think most of us have seen a teacher, I don't know, maybe it's just me because I grew up in really bad schools. I've seen a teacher snap and snatch up a kid by the collar and slam him into a locker. And I remember thinking right there, and I knew this kid was scum. This kid was scum. When I was a kid and this kid was a kid, I thought this kid is going to grow up and get the death penalty one day, and society will be better off because of it. This kid was scum. Acting like he's going to kick this teacher's ass. This guy snatched him up and slammed him up against a locker. And I remember thinking to myself, he should have just crashed him in the face. He should have just punched this kid's skull in. Because the world would be better off with this piece of crap gone from the universe. Because you know what? The punishment wouldn't have been much worse. The guy got arrested. Lost his job, obviously, but got arrested because he put his hands on a kid like that. And this kid didn't learn a lesson because everybody who's seen something like this happen before, you know exactly. This kid didn't go, oh, and suddenly realize, this narcissistic kid didn't suddenly realize, oh, I'm in danger. I could be hurt. I've stepped over a line. No. The smile on his face, forget about the things that he said afterwards and laughing about, I got this teacher fired. The smile on his face said everything. Gotcha. There are actually bad people in this world. Somebody who sells plastic bags is not even top 10. I don't even think that's top 50. I've never sat and thought about how bad some people in this world could be. There are going to be some people who will be like, dude, it's just a comic book. Why can't you sit back and enjoy it? I think I'm getting too old to just sit back and enjoy a bad comic book. And just, say, oh, it's campy. Ha, 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 ha. It's Sauron, the guy who said, I don't want to cure cancer. I just want to, make people into dinosaurs. That guy. It's a funny moment, right? Not this. Not this. This right now, Jerry Dugan to me is the guy. Not the guy. He's Nero. Nero, the final emperor of Rome, who while Rome was burning, it's purported, whether it's true or not, there's conflicting evidence, but there were apparently witnesses who were saying and wrote about that he was playing the fiddle from up high, looking down at Rome burning, going, "Oh, life sucks." That's what I feel Jerry Dugan is at this point. Dugan has the ability to produce some hard-edged material, but this wasn't that. This was just sad. This broke my heart. Just looking at and because at the end of this, spoilers for the comic book, Krakoa as a whole, and not the people, like the island itself, and Cypher, is like because Nature Girl and Dizzy the ditzy freaking psycho chick Curse gets sent down into the hole like Sabretooth. You got to actually see the hole. It was actually a hole. I actually thought the image that I got when they talk about Sabretooth was that this is where you are. You're squished like this, right? No, it was actually a little hole. So it's basically solitary confinement. It's SHU, right? SHU. She's released early without anybody else knowing about it. She's released early, along with Curse. Just go out about your merry way, do your thing, but don't tell anybody. You know what I'm saying? Don't tell anybody. But here's also a nice little, and they use the word bespoke. Oh, that was so cute. Jerry Dugan knows a word. Yeah, I'm actually really bothered by this because of how absolutely brainless this was. Don't tell anybody that I released you or that Krakoa was okay with it, even though we clearly made it evident that we are against this. More than that, he gives a signature weapon. A signature, like, it's a cudgel, which is actually a staff. This is more like a staff. It's a freaking staff made specifically for bespoke to Nature Girl that has all sorts of, as of yet to be named powers in it, which is going to make her a more powerful villain. That's cute. But you look at this thing, it's a staff made of clearly Krakoan wood, the colors on this, Rachel Rosenberg, good job. And it's got the little, pink glowy orbs all over it. So anybody who sees this is immediately going to say, that looks like one of the Krakoan gates. You can't use any Krakoan gates anymore, Cypher says. We're going to sneak you out. But as soon as any mutant sees this chick from this point on and sees that stupid staff and be like, hey, she got out, and obviously Cypher and Krakoa helped because, look, that's something, freaking Black Tom might wind up getting the heat for this one. And wouldn't Black Tom know that this happened also? Pay attention to this, Dugan. If you want actual continuity. But I mean, like, this is just one of those things, like, this was so dumb. Clearly, Cypher's going to get in trouble. And what do you get for aiding and abetting a serial murderer? What's the crime for aiding and abetting? You might as well be an accomplice. You might as well have been holding them down while the murder deed was being done. This was so bad. Even the little stuff in the back. Emma is just walking down the street, apparently. Just walking down the street. There's no reason for it. There's no freaking godly reason for it, for her to be walking down the street. But she's walking down the street, there's a big parade, and all these simpy freaking humans are out there. Oh my God! I know that you're all a bunch of superiority complex people, and you all think that you're the next wave of the future, and and us humans are all just waiting to be extinct and to meld with some machines and things because we all suck. But we love your style. This was actually the thing that actually killed me the most. countries like China don't allow frivolous nonsense to go viral, to become something special. They allow stuff that we call STEM, stuff that we reserve only for women, for the most part. They want, my God, China wants to promote learning and betterment of self, betterment of the country. There are many countries who are up and coming who are trying to do a lot of the same thing. They're trying to make it better for the people because that's better for the country. Here in the States, we have the freedom to freaking blow our faces off with a shotgun, Kurt Cobain style. Sorry, too soon? We celebrate the most banal freaking concepts imaginable. Oh my God, fashion, model, runway, body positivity, stupidity. This is the world that we live in if you're American Canadian. This is Nero watching Rome burn, not realizing what's about to happen to you. These are the... Back in the day, back when I was growing up, comic books got stupid, and you ignored the stupid shit. You ignored all the stupid shit, right? But there were stories like Sandman and The Crow. Under the Shooter era, right? And before, when Shooter was writing or drawing, right? When Roy Thomas was in charge, when he was doing his Conan. We're talking about stories that were just amazing. Like when Spider-Man was a freaking hero that anybody thought they could be. They could absolutely, everybody and anybody could be Spider-Man. Anybody could have been under that mask. That could have been your mom or your dad. Well, probably your dad. There were no tits. The X-Men actually stood for something. Emma's sitting there. We're trying to do all these wonderful things and da-da-da-da-da-da. We can't have this bad press. Bad press? The X-Men didn't care about bad press. They were sitting there telling people, hey, derps, we're better than you, and you know it. But we're going to give you these drugs that are going to make you live longer, and you'll prosper. I know. And you'll prosper better because there'll be, most of the sicknesses will be gone. And we're going to sell this stuff, and we're going to give this stuff to you for free as long as you're cool. And by the way, we have diplomatic immunity. So whatever we decide to do, whatever. Does anybody remember Mel Gibson and Danny Glover, back to Danny Glover again, Lethal Weapon Part 2? You know how everybody knew the main bad guy was the main bad guy, that South African guy, the guy that was more than happy with the apartheid and all that stuff, that South African dude? You know how we all knew he was the bad guy? Because every time he got caught red-handed doing something bad, he always said the same thing. Diplomatic immunity. And that's who the X-Men were. The most satisfying thing in the world was what happened to that dude at the end. He said the last words out of his mouth were diplomatic immunity. Right? And then, Riggs! Good movie. We know that the people who tout diplomatic immunity are the bad guys. That's just simply the way the world works. Because it's not about you being good, it's about you not being allowed to be prosecuted. So we already know that the X-Men are the bad guys to begin with. So what is this whole thing? What is this double standard thing with, we're trying to put on a good face? For what? For what? The X-Men Gallon, the X-Men are shit right now. They're shit. I wish that we were back in the days when I never thought I would say this. I wish we were back in the days when Fox Studios owned X-Men and Marvel was lying about that Marvel was purposefully trying to push the Inhumans as the new X-Men and not having the X-Men around, and then lying about doing exactly the thing that they were doing. I miss those days. Why? Because at least then I was saying, I want more X-Men. I want my X-Men back, instead of saying, burn this shit to the ground. Oh my God. They've just made all of us Mystique. They've just made all of us Destiny, telling Mystique to burn Krakoa to the ground. Oh my God, I really do wish somebody would just burn Krakoa to the ground. Because this is the worst freaking time for X-Men. I'm sorry. I want you to stop and really reflect on this. This is the hands down worst time for the X-Men ever. Most people didn't care about the X-Men for the first 91 issues, I guess it was. 93, 94. Right? Nobody cared until Giant Size X-Men came out. And then all of a sudden, oh shoot. This is really good. Right? And then the X-Men started becoming amazing. And then Chris Claremont came in and Shooter, making sure that there was continuity, right? Making sure there were repercussions for things. Dark Phoenix Saga. Everybody's pissed off at Jean Grey for destroying that planet and all the other stuff that she did. The trial of Jean Grey, right? The death of Jean Grey, all that stuff, which is just like memorable stuff that actually brought us to tears. Those are consequences. And Chris Claremont was like, there shouldn't be any consequence for what you did. It's just some nameless inhabited planet. Who cares, right? Shooter's like, no, there has to be consequences for that. And it's like, I hate that he's making me do this. Except you didn't hate the idea that this wound up becoming one of the most celebrated stories and most oft imitated and never duplicated stories ever made. So there's that. I thought that, I don't know, like the X-Men have always been something amazing. Always been something amazing. And then all of a sudden, the X-Men suck right now. And I wish they were gone. I wish they were completely gone from the spotlight. I don't want to see the X-Men anymore. I just want them to disappear. I'm going to say something that Jim Cornette always says, right? For famous wrestling personality, awesome podcasts. He says, how can I miss you if you don't go away? We went through years of not getting any X-Men and we missed the hell out of them. And it was still a better time than this, where we've got an overflow of X-Men and they've got the Eternals, the fucking Eternals mixed up with them. And all of it just absolutely sucks. This is the worst time for the X-Men in the history of the X-Men. Since 1963, I think it was. The absolute hands down worst time ever for the X-Men. Where absolute garbage is being pushed out to us. I am so completely beside myself right now. I actually feel depressed. That's not why I read comic books. It's not. Just last night, I was watching the first half of this Image Comics history thing. It's on Tubi, right? The history of Image Comics. I only watched the first half because I don't want to see, the stuff all breaking down and falling apart, because I'm watching with my kids and my wife, But I'm pointing out, I was like, I like Jim Zub's work. I really do, a lot. He makes a good point that I hate this point that he made. He says there are no celebrity. We just had not really a conversation, but like a quick little back and forth thing. He was like, I just got to see this kid from Stranger Things. I took a picture. I don't usually do the whole celebrity thing, but And I was like, you say you don't like to do the celebrity thing, but I saw you at Comic-Con right before COVID, right? I saw you at Fan Expo Canada over here in Toronto. And I saw the look on your face that when you found out that you got to be sitting next to Jim Byrne, right? Dude went out and bought himself I forget how much he paid for it, but he bought he left his booth for a minute to go out and find somebody who was selling I forget which freaking comic book it was, one of the Galactus Fantastic Four comic books, if I remember correctly. And he came back and he's just like, dude, you got to sign this for me. And he's like, yeah, absolutely. Here. What do I make it out to? It's Jim Byrne. What do you expect? Biggest freaking pervert in comics. But whatever. Yeah, I saw his face, and he's like, yeah, that's one thing, but there are no real celebrities in comic books. That's the thing. Aside from Stan Lee, if anybody's walking down the street, who's going to recognize anybody, walking down the street, right? So, no, there aren't really any celebrities and things. I'm like, but you know what? There used to be. There used to be. And it's never going to be Hulk Hogan level. It's never going to be on the level where somebody says, oh my God, that's Hulk Hogan. I've never watched wrestling before, but everybody knows who Hulk Hogan is. Everybody knows. There's a reason why Hulk Hogan hasn't changed his features that much. Maybe there's Hollywood Hulk Hogan for a little while, but he still obviously looked like freaking Hulk Hogan, right? There's a reason why, because he is more recognizable than freaking Michael Jordan, right? I'm not saying more people worship Hulk Hogan. No, I'm saying people who don't watch basketball and have never watched basketball, and people who don't watch wrestling and have never watched wrestling. If Michael Jordan and Hulk Hogan are walking down the street, I promise you, there are more people who are going to look and say, hey, look, it's Hulk Hogan walking next to a tall black guy. That's not to insult Michael Jordan, because I'd freak out over both of them and be like, oh, shoot. You know what I'm saying? And one of you guys isn't a freaking racist, but like it's besides the point. So lowest moment of his life, let it go. More people who are not familiar with the two industries ever would recognize Hulk Hogan, right? Aside from Stan Lee, and more people would recognize Hulk Hogan than Stan Lee. But Stan Lee was still a celebrity's celebrity, right? And they knew he was kind and warm. I had a great interaction with Stan Lee, Like, absolutely amazing, beautiful stuff, yeah? Freaking, man. When I was watching this History of Image Comics documentary with my wife and the kids, my 7-year-old wasn't that interested, but my 9-year-old and my wife were just like, oh my God, like this stuff really happened. Here's a picture of Rob Liefeld. Nowadays people make fun of Rob Liefeld. Dude, you don't get to do that. You don't get to do that. Here's a guy who was on television shows, like talk shows. They were bringing him out. He got, like, Eazy-E came to see him, right? All y'all NWA straight out of Compton, rap heads, right? Like that. Wow, that was amazing stuff. That was groundbreaking. Eazy-E, he didn't go to see Eazy-E. Eazy-E came to see Rob Liefeld. If you're not from that era, you don't get an opinion on this. No. You don't get an opinion on this. Eazy-E was like, oh, shoot. Built like a tank, yet hard to hit. Eazy-E, he came to see Rob Liefeld. Lines wrapped around the freaking block. Lineups wrapped around the block to see these guys. To see Jim Lee, Rob Liefeld, Todd McFarlane. You don't get to say things like that. television commercials, news, like CNN and all that, reporting on the goings-on of the comic book world. You don't get to say things like that. I know that he was there in history. It's not an argument that I'm willing to get into with somebody on freaking Facebook. But you don't get to say things like that without acknowledging history. When you've got, I get the whole celebrity thing. Oh, these movies are made and, Jim Starlin and Neil Gaiman don't get to walk down the street and people flock to them and da-da-da-da-da, whatever. But when people see my Infinity Gauntlet and they're like, what are these signatures on there? I'm like, these are the guys who actually created the Infinity Gauntlet. One of the guys is the guy who actually created Thanos. Like this, that, and the other thing. Hey, one of the guys is the guy who did all the artwork for and a lot of the storytelling for the most popular Wonder Woman story ever, where the movies were actually based off of these stories. Some of these, they look at them like, oh, wow. It's not just trying to be nice to me. It's actually, oh, you got to meet these guys? Yeah, I got to meet these guys. I have a more than just a handshake relationship with these guys. You know what I'm saying? I actually talked to these guys. Rest in peace, George Perez. Really wish that Carlos from Gotham Central would have gotten that picture of him giving me a kiss. Because, wow. Right there, man. Right there. Big old fat kiss. It was a wet kiss. It was a wet kiss. I was okay. I barely even rubbed it off me. I get that it's not going to be that level of celebrity, but you have to understand what celebrity means nowadays, right? People wouldn't go crazy and start freaking out. Oh, lines and droves of people lining up to see some of these people back in the day, like all that, right? Nowadays, when you have, Kardashian, when you put the name Kardashian on something right away, it's like, oh, yeah. But like, honestly, I question Wasp. Let's just say a band like Wasp. All right? Loved this band. Headless Children, still one of my favorite metal songs ever. You could say, oh, these guys, like Blackie Lawless walking down the street. Nobody's going to, most people aren't going to recognize him, right? Most people aren't going to be like, oh my God. Dave Mustaine, holy shit. Dave Mustaine, lead singer, guitarist of Megadeth, and former guitarist, one of the founding members of Metallica, right? Just like a couple months ago, he saw this young girl wearing a Megadeth t-shirt. And he goes walking up to her. It's like in an airport, I think. And he's just like, hey, nice t-shirt. And she's like, ew, oh my God, old man, get away from me. Like this. He's like, no, I'm not trying to creep on you or anything like that. I'm just like, this is my band. You're wearing the t-shirt. That's my band. And she was so freaked out. She's like, okay, ew, whatever. And just left. And it really left him feeling a certain kind of way. Or people have this kind of weird nostalgia for stuff that they never actually went through, right? Like the definition of nostalgia is this love of stuff that you experienced back when it was relevant, back when it first came out, right? There are people wearing Megadeth t-shirts who've never heard a Megadeth song. They just thought the t-shirt looked cool and the name and the logo was awesome. You have brain damage. You need therapy. You need therapy. The founder of that band walks up to you and he's saying, no, dude, this is my band. Right? Things like that. And yet, even though this guy isn't recognized like this, dude, both Megadeth and freaking Wasp, when their tour bus came to town, when the concert was over or before it started, there would still be a lineup of girls looking to please these people. Yes, even the drummer, right? Looking to please, please use your own imagination for this. Looking to pleasure these people beforehand, lined up, some of them with their boyfriends right next to them, thinking, "Oh yeah, we get to go on the bus and actually meet these guys, and cool." And they get up, and the security says, "Yeah, bud, you're gonna have to wait here, but your girl can go." And he's thinking, "Oh, okay." And then the girl goes on, and then comes off with a big smile and doesn't understand why. Who was it? Who was it? I actually read one. I used to read a bunch of rock band biographies, autobiographies specifically. I think it was Sammy Hagar who said that. Anyway, like, holy crap, dude! Like, don't tell me when you got people lining up to see you at a freaking convention. I practically got kicked out of the line to see Kevin Eastman in Montreal recently. I wanted to see Kevin Eastman. I pre-bought art to go and see Kevin Eastman. He was there, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles dude. And they're like, "Hey bud, I'm sorry, from you and back is gonna have to be the 4:30 or 4:45 meeting. He's only got about another hour of this. Hopefully we can get this line through. Like, no guarantees." And then he's got a signing, or not a signing, a speech he's got to give, or photos. He's got a photo op, and then he's gonna come back. And so just to let you know, like, you could be in this line, but you're definitely not going to be able to see him this time. You're gonna have to wait. And it was like 10:30 in the morning, 10:45 I think it was in the morning. And I'm like, holy shit, I gotta wait 6 hours, more than in excess of 6 hours, whatever, just to get in line again. Yo. So don't tell me that there aren't still celebrity, because there's different levels of celebrity. There are different levels of celebrity, dude. And I promise you, if a Zub or anybody else were to go on to, what's that one thing where you can, I forget what it's called, Cameo. If you go on Cameo, right? There are people who would pay for you to go on Cameo. They would pay for you to give them a shout out for something, right? I get it. I do. In my heart, I get it. But comics actually used to mean something. I know that for younger generation who don't know about the Image Comics craze and the death of Superman and all this crazy stuff that happened back in the day, that just people are like, oh my God, this is a revolution. I hear you. Or you don't think that this is stuff that could be, blown up out of proportion and, out of this world crazy. But you couldn't be more wrong. You simply couldn't be more wrong. Comics used to mean something. Why don't they now? Because they could again. I've heard people say, it'll never get like that again. No, it could. Because the situation is the exact same. It's the exact same. The conditions have already been met. You've got a bunch of artists and a bunch of writers, right? In this case, it was mostly artists. But you got a bunch of people out there, blah, 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 who are not particularly satisfied with the money that they're making. They're under contracts where they're not allowed to do a whole lot else. But meanwhile, the conditions are actually even better, because now there's this huge demand. Think about it. Most of the amazing movies that you've seen were comic books long before they were movies. The biggest, highest grossing movies in the world today used to be comic books. Or still are comic books, technically. But you get what I'm saying. They were comics first. The conditions are even better for there to be some disgruntled people to come together and say, hey, we're going someplace else. There's only one thing missing, and that is the talent. That is the talent. If the people who are being hired right now had talent, or at least the drive to be better. Because are you telling me that a Jeff Johns, I don't know about nowadays, because it doesn't really do a lot of comic books nowadays. But Jeff Johns, you telling me that Jeff Johns could have been the next Rob Liefeld? You telling me Alan Moore could have been the next Todd McFarlane? Who's somebody else? Neil Gaiman, right? He actually went and did some other stuff, which I get it, but like some of these people, you're telling me that you couldn't have had a revolution of some of these amazing writers and artists who are out there right now. Alex Ross, Stanley Lau, Art Germ. You're telling me? Ooh, Stefan Sokovia and his wife, who somehow makes the exact same looking pictures. You're telling me that these guys couldn't all just say F it, we quit, en masse? And instead of going to an image, actually starting their own image, call it something else obviously, copyright. You're telling me that this couldn't be something absurdly amazing? And they get together and they do some collaborations or their own independent stuff. And they build it up to something amazing. I know you're going to sit here and say, oh, but it can never be like the image revolution, da-da-da-da-da-da. Nobody knew who these people were back in the day. Nobody knew who they were. But Marvel took a hit in their sales. They said, holy crap, what is it, 44 of the top 50 comic books that came out that year were all written by the same seven, or drawn, they were worked on by the same seven people? And you're going to tell me that people knew that could happen? Nobody saw that coming. Nobody could see the next thing coming. And knowing, when you look at Mark Millar and his Millarverse, Netflix buying his options, I don't know what happened to that. Maybe this stuff failed. I haven't been following it. I don't know. But this dude got a lot of money to go solo on selling his Millarverse. You're telling me that these guys couldn't just say, I'm going to skip the corporate and I'm going to go right into something amazing? No. I'm going to do my own thing. I'm going to, we as a collaboration are going to do our own thing. No, don't tell me that. Don't give me that line of crap, because I promise you that could absolutely happen. Unfortunately, there aren't too many people who could actually do that. I see Jerry Dugan doing something like this, and this is Nero playing the fiddle on one of the top tiers of a burning Rome. Not interested. Not interested. When you see some of the crap that's being put out today, oh my God. I'm going to do a quick little conversation about this, because I had this conversation with my wife. My wife said she wanted to go and see the Woman King, I think it's called. It's Angela Davis. I get it. She's an awesome actress, but why would she choose to take this role without actually looking into the history of these people? Like the Dahomies, whatever they're called. Like, these were horrible people. They could have picked a good king and time period, but instead they chose this scumbag king instead, and they're rewriting history and saying that they were great people. They weren't. They were horrible people, and they were not at all successful. They had a good assassination campaign where they beheaded like one of the lieutenants. The lieutenant's not even that high of a rank as far as officers are concerned. And then within 2 battles later, the French, oh my God, here's Hitler. There's no bullets in his guns. We surrender. The French kicked their asses in just 2 battles. Nah, dude, don't tell me these guys were anything special. Benin. They weren't benign in the slave trade. We're talking about reparations. That's one of the places you should start seeking your reparations. No, some people are gonna claim that I'm racist on this. Okay, cute. Try telling the guy who married a black woman and has black children and who grew up in black neighborhoods and mostly hangs out with people who aren't white. Go ahead and keep trying to convince people that I am the racist guy. That's fine. In the meanwhile, this Sicilian guy, whose heritage, mind you, whose Sicilian heritage is Carthaginian, which is modern-day Tunis and beyond, which is African. I know African geography doesn't apply to most people. I'm of the lineage, I don't know about the lineage, but I'm a countryman descendant of Hannibal the Great. There's no way for my genealogy to go back and actually see if I was related, because we don't have genetic testing on Hannibal the Great. That'd be awesome, though, if I was related to him. Dude, I'd be walking around with my dick out all the time. This is my spear that I launch over top of the gates of Rome. I'd be walking around with my dick out all the time. I'm direct descendant of Hannibal the Great. And it makes sense, doesn't it? Hannibal, who marched the elephants over Rome, over the Alps to Rome. That is a triumphant, powerful African story that you could tell. And you don't have to rewrite history to show these scumbag slave traders who failed in every single way possible and have women doing hurricane radas on guys who were 6 times bigger than them. Maybe he was only 5 times bigger than them. Have that chick try and do a hurricane run on me. Watch what happens. And I'm not as big as that guy. I might be taller, but I'm not as big that way. I'm older now, you know? Dude, like, come on. The Dora Milaje were amazing. This was garbage. Where did you think they got the idea from? Yeah, I know. And they rewrote it and made it completely fictional, and it was way better. But when you sit there and say, based on true events, based, not actual. There are so many better stories that you can tell about this. I first learned about the Orisha by reading comic books with Storm in it, Aurora Monroe. They're doing this whole thing with the Little Mermaid and just making her black and saying, it's not about race and you're a racist if you don't like it. But that doesn't make sense. Some scientist guy goes and says, hey, I'm going to do an AI version of this and Ariel will actually look white. I'll not only make her skin white, I'll actually take away the black features and make them Caucasoid features, so you can actually make her white. I just want to show the technology and what I can do, since there's so many people clamoring about this. It's not a racist thing. I just want to show what AI is capable of doing nowadays. You know, the deep fake thing. That sounds interesting. I'm not interested in seeing the movie whether Ariel is white or black. I don't care. But what I will say is, oh, that sounds interesting. That genuinely sounds interesting. Okay, cool. I didn't know AI could do that. Meanwhile, you know, with the Orisha, they actually have a mermaid god, a mermaid goddess, right? There's actually a god of the mermaids. And it's like, holy crap. Fuck the stupid Disney story. I want to see that story. And now a mermaid can actually be black. Just don't call her Ariel. That would be dumb. But you can actually do that. And nobody, anybody would say something at that point, that's where you know somebody would probably be a racist. It's like, dude, this is an actual, like, this is based on real mythology, right? Real stories in mythology. Like this, like, why do you have a problem with this, right? No, I don't think that, for the most part, I don't think anybody have a problem with that. It's when you start race swapping and gender swapping and sexuality swapping. It's like all these things. It's like you're just doing this for a publicity stunt. You're trying to get cheap publicity, and we're calling you out for it. And you're calling me a racist for calling you out on your cheap freaking gimmick. And somehow the people are so infatuated and mesmerized by these corporate execs. Dude, this is, I want to give you an example. This is like Harvey Weinstein telling you that you're supposed to like sexual exploitation of women in movies. And the majority of people saying, yeah, and you're a misandrist if you don't like that. Because these are corporate Hollywood executives who are trying to do something because in their social circles they say, hey, here's bad things. Here's bad things. and we're going to switch them, and we're going to do this because it's going to be a big publicity. We're going to make this character gay, this character who has a history of womanizing people, we're going to make the character gay instead. I would have been better off if you had just taken away the womanizing thing. Unless it actually helped with the story development and he learned some valuable lessons about being a womanizer. You know what I'm saying? Oh, here's these two girls who were really good friends and they were awesome. You know what I'm saying? And blah, blah, blah. But now you're going to make them lesbians because women can't have friends. They can only have sexual partners. Oh, and we're going to take this character who has visibly in comic books always been white, but now we're going to make him black. Just because, you know, it's a publicity stunt. That's all it is. It's a stupid publicity stunt. And all any of us are saying, and maybe there's some racists out there who actually say, I don't like black people, so blah, 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 blah. Okay, I get it. That person is clearly racist. But the people who are just like, I'm not going to watch this because if you have to resort to stupid publicity stunts to sell your movie, then you clearly don't have anything special in your movie. It's not going to be a good movie. I've already seen the original in whatever form it was in, whether you're just doing a reboot of another movie or of a cartoon or a movie based on a comic book or whatever. I've already seen the original story. I don't need to see your new story. I would like to see it for the nostalgia. But if you're promoting that you race swapped and gender swapped and orientation swapped, whatever, if you swapped certain things on certain, people just for inclusion's sake, meaning translation, a cheap publicity stunt, then you've already told me that there's no substance to what you're doing and you're relying on this. You're pushing, look, we're being more inclusive. When I see a trailer of a movie where it makes me go, oh, shoot, well, I need to see what happens next. I guess I've got to see this movie. Then it's a good movie. But if the only thing people are talking about, positively or negatively, in a trailer is, oh, right, they race swapped somebody, representation, or, oh, God, they race swapped somebody. Like cheap heat. If that's all people are talking about, I have no interest in seeing your movie. None. Woman King doesn't interest me. Top Gun, however, if they would have switched Maverick to be a black guy or a black woman or a lesbian black woman, right? I'd be like, okay, so it's not going to be a fun movie. You're going out of your way to show that you just did a visual change. That's it. Nothing special about what you're doing here. Nothing special about this. You didn't spend a lot of time on good writers. You simply told the casting director, hey, this is the thing that I want you to do. Not interested in seeing that. I don't want to see a freaking reboot of one of my favorite movies of all time, Barry Gordy's The Last Dragon. I don't want to see a reboot of that where Shonuff is played by Harvey Keitel. Now, if you did it where he was race swapped with what's his name? Willem Dafoe. That might be interesting. I have to admit it might be interesting, but honestly, I'd rather see it be Samuel L. Jackson. Right? The Willem Dafoe thing could be kind of cool, though. Yeah, that's right. On the Shonuff of Harlem. That could actually be kind of cool. Okay, fine. Maybe don't take anything I just said seriously. Anyway, no, seriously, like I don't want to see freaking Timax being Bruce Leroy being replaced with freaking. I don't even want to see it being replaced with Jackie Chan. I don't want to see that. All right, I don't want to see that. First off, what's the purpose of making a reboot? What's the purpose of it? There's no purpose. There's no reason. It was a great movie. Just let it go. Oh, you just want to make money. And then you want to make a big deal about it. And then you want to get these activist social justice warriors together to be like, you're just mad that they race swapped somebody. And so now these corporate executives are thinking that, you are now going to go and watch the movie. In general, no, nobody's going to watch this movie. My wife looked at the history of the Benin people, not the Benin people, but the Dahomies and whatnot, and she's like, this really was a horrible, horrible empire. Genuinely terrible. Yeah, I don't really want to support this movie. But Top Gun is looking really good right now. I've been talking for an hour and 15 minutes about this stuff, and I promise you I can go a lot more. Breaks my heart to see that activists are so desirous to activate that they're willing to activate at the behest of billionaires to make billionaires more money, to try and make billionaires more money. That's embarrassing. That's embarrassing. All these images and the propaganda they put out of the great revolutionaries of the time. Could you imagine if Martin Luther King Jr. was actually bought and paid for by the Roxxon Corporation? Let's just make it completely fictitious, right? And he wouldn't say anything bad about this group or this industry because, you know, but he'd say bad about other things and just try and get you activated. Would people, if you found out he was getting a regular paycheck or donations from Roxxon, would Martin Luther King Jr. have had the same following? Would he have the same legacy? It'd be a very different legacy if he had a legacy at all. He'd be thrown away just like anybody else who is a race baiter or whatever, right? But he has a pretty damn solid legacy. Breaks my heart. Breaks my heart to see that this is what the world has become. And I blame Kim Kardashian for this. And her freaking mother, who made her and Ray J do like 3 different sex tapes. And then the mom watched all 3 of them to see which one would be the best one to leak right before the TV show came out. She watched her own daughter doing that. 3 different whole entire sessions, tapes, whatever. You watched. It's no wonder that incest porn is the biggest category out there right now. This is horrible. This is a horrible world that we live in right now. It's horrible. I remember when Twitter first came out, they said, imagine a world where you can follow on your phone a famous scientist or a top-notch reporter who you don't have to wait for the article to be printed, blah, 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 blah. You could have direct access to these people, and you'd be one of the first to know when they just put out a quick little 144 character, 122 character, whatever it was, tweet with an attached article. Hey, da-da-da-da-da. And you could be like, oh, wow. Or if you follow somebody, you know, whatever. And instead, it turns into Twitter's just this big thing where people are calling each other the most horrible freaking names imaginable. This is the world that we live in, where greatness gets turned into crap. And we're standing on top of a garbage heap screaming, I'm the king of the world! And it's not the world that I want to be in. Kings, surf, anything in between. No thanks. Guys, I'm going to finally end it here. And I will talk to you guys later. Professor Bill, Comic Book University. Like the video, watch an ad. Class dismissed.